The ongoing situation between Russia and Ukraine has left many Ukrainians fleeing the country. What does Canada plan to do about this, and how will Canada take in Ukrainian refugees? Joining me now to discuss this and more is International Development Minister Harjit Sajjan. Minister, thank you for joining me. Perhaps we'll just start out with, obviously the ongoing situation in Ukraine, but I guess just first of all is kind of a broad question. What do you think Canada should be doing, and what is Canada doing to help support Ukrainians and to bring in Ukrainian refugees into Canada?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for that very important question. We've been monitoring the situation extremely closely, and I've been personally involved with the work that we have been doing in Ukraine since we got elected in my previous portfolio as a Minister of National Defense, and now as Minister of International Development. So we were monitoring, when I said the situation closely, daily. We anticipated what some of the needs were. We worked with the United Nations to start stockpiling humanitarian supplies in the country. I visited the UN as well to making sure that work was being coordinated. And our worst fears were realized when President Putin launched his illegal invasion of the country against the sovereignty of Ukraine. And now we're responding and putting the resources. So in addition to obviously the financial support, what I wanted to do was make sure that work was being coordinated. So I've actually I've been visiting the region. It started in Romania. We went to Moldova and actually visited one of the border sites very close to Odessa, about 30 kilometers from Odessa. And we met with the refugees that were fleeing, a lot of them children. And it was so sad to see. Some of them were crying because they were, their homes were being bombed. And they actually showed us videos and pictures. But one thing they also knew is once they realized that we were Canadians, and they were so thankful that Canada it will be there with them, because they know that Canada has always been strongly standing with them. So what we've done there is we worked at that site. We were seeing the work that UNHCR was doing alongside other NGOs, and as yesterday I was in Poland with the Prime Minister and to look at the work that was being done there. And today I just finished my meetings at the EU, all about coordinating our support. So we have, even beforehand, put $50 million towards the humanitarian development work. We announced $100 million with like-minded partners, with an important emphasis on children. In fact, actually, funding is going directly to three organizations that focuses on child protection and providing the important psychological support. So it is heart-wrenching what we have seen, and thank you for sharing this work with everyone else.
And I mean, what do you think was accomplished? You mentioned you were in Poland with the Prime Minister. What do you think was accomplished in Poland that I guess is kind of something new that's happening? I mean, obviously before the foreign trip that you ministers and the Prime Minister took. So just what do you think was accomplished based off of taking this trip with the Prime Minister?
First of all, it's extremely important when leaders come together and talk. They're able to discuss things directly and coordinate the effort. Just like at any time, imagine you coming together with somebody who's like-minded and may have an impact and moving forward. Having a personal discussion, you discuss options, you bounce ideas off one another, and then you decide on taking action. And I can assure you, as we have taken further action on sanctions, we have increased our support. But what this also allows us to do is, look somebody in the eye and say, listen, what do you need? How can we do, what can we do better? And how can we do more for the Ukrainian people? How do we bring this to an end? And so it allows us to provide coordinated support. But more importantly, this is not just about one particular area. Refugees are going into multiple spots in multiple areas. So we need to make sure that support is there for the people who are coming out. But equally important is the humanitarian support that's going into the country. So, getting an understanding, where are the humanitarian corridors, making sure that we send a strong message to President Putin to honor international law and allow humanitarian corridors go through. But when those are open, making sure that we take advantage of it. At the same time, we need to make sure that those supply depots are fully stocked up. Like in the EU today, during one of my meetings, one thing I learned was there's a shortage of certain supplies. So when I'm going to be going back, talking to some of the other ministers and looking at how we can galvanize Canadian companies to provide that support. So a lot gets done during this time. But one thing is for certain: every time we have met with the refugees that's coming out, they know how strong Canada has been there for them, and that will continue to be there for them.
And I mean, obviously, Canada can take action to take on Russia by itself, but obviously, doing it isn't, just Canada taking action. It requires action from other members of NATO, the EU, etc. So, I mean, in your capacity as Minister of International Development, how are you planning on working with some of your foreign counterparts to take on Russia and to defeat Vladimir Putin and allow Ukraine to win?
So this effort is, it takes entire governments to come together, and that's exactly what we are doing. Minister Jolie was in the region. In fact, actually, we would talk. She briefed me up on her, what she has learned, and I'll be talking to her and what I have learned. What this also allows us to do is making sure, as we make decisions on and we make the announcements so Canadians know what we're doing. But coordinating the work is very important. So for the people on the ground, they need to make sure that they get the right support. And for decision makers like us, we need to make sure that that support is there. So that is absolutely important. So those are the things that I get to talk to with my counterparts. And as we look at, like, I'll give you an example. Just today, we talked about with one of my EU counterparts was the impact this is going to have on other developing countries and other crises, because Ukraine provided significant amount of wheat and food for other developing countries, a significant amount. Lebanon, Egypt, Yemen, other crisis areas as well, and other just developing nations who needed it. That has stopped. So imagine the other wider crisis that has been created. So we're working on filling those gaps as well as we look at providing that direct support. But I've always said is, I learn more during my visits in the field, talking to the people who are working on the ground. I learn more there for my decision making than all the briefings I get in Ottawa. I know our folks obviously do tremendous work. I had the deputy minister actually with me on this trip, and I also had Yvonne Baker, who's a member of parliament and who's Ukrainian descent. And he talked about how his grandfather is from the area, and he spoke Ukrainian with many of the families, and they appreciated, that's personal connection that we all have, whether you're Ukrainian or not. One thing that Ukrainians do know, and all of Ukraine knows, is that all of Canada, regardless of where you're originally from, that we have their back and will continue to have their back until this Russian aggression is defeated.
Okay, and just one final question, because I know you have limited time, Minister, but obviously, even after this war, Russia and Ukraine are still going to be directly beside each other. And so I guess, is Canada willing to extend support for as long as needed, basically? Because again, Russia and Ukraine still going to be directly beside each other even after this war is over. And so obviously that relationship probably still isn't going to be very good even after the war.
One thing I can tell you and all your listeners, we have always stood by Ukraine, and we'll continue to stand by with them and helping them rebuild as well.
Okay, that is International Development Minister Harjit Sajjan. Minister, thank you so much for making the time and for providing some of your insight after taking the trip to Europe. Thank you again.
Hey, thank you.